Satire, very strong language and adult humour from the start. Well, what did you expect? It's Frankie Boyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Frankie Boyles!
Hello and welcome to New World Order. I think it's amazing the difference in Theresa May since she called that election. Before that election, she looked formidable, and now she looks like something you'd find in a skip at the back of Jim Henson's workshop. Imagine how badly you have to have messed up if you're a Tory Prime Minister and it's not safe for you to go to Chelsea. Jeremy Corbyn was down at the Grenfell disaster. He was hugging people. Can you imagine what a hug from Theresa May would be like? It'd be like a judo class for depressed sex offenders. So it's the DUP, the homophobic DUP, that have propped up this government. And I've never understood the link between homophobia and Christianity. Because who was gayer than Jesus? Jesus is the gayest character in all of fiction. And even if you don't think that, he hung about with lepers. Is it really likely that he's going to be squeamish about seeing two men kissing? What's the DUP's argument? Jesus wouldn't have wanted to see a man with another man's cock in his hand unless it had fallen off. What if our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ, is trying to reattach a leper's cock? What then? Someone should ask the DUP this at a press conference. What if our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ, is reattaching a leper's cock? The public wants answers. OK, let's get on with the show. Joining me to discuss this week's big topics, please welcome Sara, Pascoe and Katherine Ryan! Are you enjoying having a stable government?
I love it. I love the coalition. I'm on board, because it means that after all this time, there really is a magic money tree. Because she found £1 billion in it. What else is up there?
Homophobia.
Oh.
Tonight, I'll be making two propositions for us to discuss. First up, hope is dead. This is the idea that Britain, even though it has avoided a majority Tory government, is still pretty much doomed. We're still being run by a Tory party so radically awful that its agenda was actually diluted by doing a deal with a group of right-wing religious fanatics. And we have a Prime Minister who has just shown she's capable of mishandling a tragedy so badly she made the Queen seem down to earth. My favourite bit so far was like when she went to form a government, you know, so she'd been to the Queen and then she did her speech outside 10 Downing Street. Do you remember that? She was standing there, her wee husband's behind her, the wee kind of gay danger mouse kind of character. And she's standing there looking like she's had her makeup done by a colour-blind embalmer. And does the same speech that she would have done if she'd won, and then at the end went, right, let's get to work. That's like a pilot who's just crashed his plane right into the tarmac, standing there as the survivors crawl free of the wreckage, going, hope you enjoyed the flight. So, joining us to discuss all this political chaos, please welcome the poet Benjamin Zephaniah. Benjamin, chaotic times. What do you make of it?
Strange times. A lot of my friends from abroad ring me and they say, what's happening in Britain? You're killing each other, your government's abandoned you. It's interesting times. Great time to write poetry, I guess. I haven't written any. but, you know, I can feel it coming on. I kind of feel pregnant.
Yeah.
This week, the Conservatives announced they'd finally reached an agreement with the DUP, promising an extra £1 billion for Northern Ireland. Here's the DUP's Paul Given, showing what a forward-thinking, zeitgeist-surfing party they are when questioned about the Northern Ireland Assembly.
Remarkably, John O'Dowd and Sinn Féin think they know what Unionists believe, and that reminds me of a story in the Bible about Haman, who built the gallows for Mordecai, believing that the plot would ultimately lead to their downfall. I think Sinn Féin will recognise the Unionist community know the plot that they are trying to conspire against the DUP and to weaken unionism.
Some people really liked it. They were like, thank God, the Bible, finally.
Some fans of the Book of Esther at the back. Have you followed the DUP at all, Benjamin?
Once upon a time, it's going to sound crazy, but I wanted to buy a pair of binoculars. I'm into bird watching. And it was the days before eBay and all that kind of stuff, and I turned up at the guy's house, and it was just outside Manchester, but he was a supporter of the DUP. Oh. And he locked me in his house and was telling me how great they are. And he put on this film, and there was a demonstration with all these DUP people, and there was one black person, and he went, "See, we are supported by the black community of Northern Ireland." It was scary, you know. But seriously, they got £1 billion out of it, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because, you know, if that would have happened in a developing country in Asia or Africa, that would have been called a bribe.
Yeah.
Now, Jeremy Corbyn spent the weekend at Glastonbury, taking to the pyramid stage. Here's the rousing moment when he addressed the crowds.
If you can see that far, look on the wall right over there that surrounds this wonderful festival. And there's a message on that wall for President Donald Trump. Build bridges, not walls.
Build bridges, not walls is the message that they wrote on a wall. That they built. So.
And they built it to keep people out, or it wouldn't have been as nice. But does Jeremy Corbyn make you feel hopeful that hope isn't dead?
Yeah, he does make me feel hopeful.
Maybe.
Well, he's not going to get into power, speaking of Glastonbury. All those people already voted for him. If Jeremy Corbyn is serious about power, he's got to go on before, like, a cattle auction in Melton Mowbray.
I think there's something so creepy, though, about the chanting for a politician. So, regardless of who that politician is, I think that, just like booing a politician, it all feels very infantile, and I found it really creepy, this Glastonbury thing.
Anyway, we can't talk about the current political unrest without addressing the recent fire that destroyed Grenfell Tower, a preventable tragedy that has left a community feeling abandoned, angry and frustrated at a system that has let them down. So, how do we reach a point where the people of Grenfell were left unassisted in the days following the fire? Why don't we have an accurate figure of how many people died? And what does the whole thing tell us about how casually ordinary people's deaths are viewed by elites? I mean, it was horrifying, the whole thing, wasn't it? You just see a community abandoned. You see people there going, where are the services? Where is the state? As people can help themselves.
It's the fact that it was avoidable, which is where the anger comes from. And it's so huge, and something has to change.
I mean, when you see the way that, sorry for going into party politics again, the way that Corbyn was received there compared to Theresa May, it shows you how people feel about the government.
Is there something to the predictability of it that's the horror? So people are saying this is going to happen. The Residents' Association are writing to the council regularly saying this is going to be a disaster, and nothing's done about it.
I retweeted something a few days ago, and it's from YouTube, and it's from 1982, and it's predicting this fire. Wow. There's all these men in suits talking about the way they've been clad. It's a prediction of this fire, not of this particular tower, Grenfell Tower, but it's saying this is going to happen in 1982. I've only just seen it, actually. I just drove past it on the way here. But the thing that I found really heartening is that people like me who call ourselves, I call myself an anarchist, and people mock us and they say anarchy is impossible, it can't work. The government left the people on their own. at a time when they were most needed, and the people just went, right, you organise this, you organise that, we've got that church hall, you do this, you do that. That is real anarchy in action. And it shows you that people can work together when they really need to. And we should just do it more often. We shouldn't wait until there's tragedies and disasters like this. But we think being democratic is voting every 4 or 5 years. That is not being political, that's not being democratic, that's just being apathetic. It's time we become more revolutionary. That doesn't mean violent, that just means taking control of our lives, not just when there's a disaster happening.
Yeah. What do we think is going on with the body count?
Well, I think if you look at any building where there's a lot of people, how can you count everybody that's there? You can't just count by the residents on the census. There's going to be people visiting, there's going to be people staying overnight. A lot of people apparently ran to the top of the building. And so, you know, they can't find their bodies.
Well, David Lammy, who's one of the local MPs, he's getting very, quite rightly worked up about this lack of a proper body count. And he thinks, well, maybe there's a thing there where they wanted to avoid civil unrest, right? But maybe it's also because they don't want unrest at a time when they're trying to re-establish this minority government. I mean, we just don't know. There's that whole thing where people say, oh, the operation wasn't there. The operation wasn't there to help people and to rehouse people and stuff. But there will be an operation that kicks in instinctively, which is to cover up. Because that's what British society does. I think it's almost on the level of a reflex. And there'll be things now like they might not have survivors groups on the board of the inquest, maybe not have the fire brigade union, things like that. That'll be happening almost as a kind of reflex.
I thought it was quite shocking the people who had to resign from shelter, because the people on the board of that organisation were so closely connected to the people who had been building the buildings. Also, that thing about like Jeremy Corbyn getting this warmer welcome, I think the other thing I find really dangerous about kind of good figures and bad figures in politics is this has happened under both parties. Yes. It isn't something that's new. This is what happens in any government. They cut corners and the poorest people are the victims.
Let's be honest, why were those tower blocks built? They were kind of high-rise slums to take all of these poor people out. Basically slum clearance that built those buildings.
I think there's a genuine moral thing. So John McDonnell was in trouble for saying, oh, this was like social murder or whatever the phrase was. And I think it's worse than that, because if you set out to murder someone in a moment of passion, that's one thing. If you set up a whole series of circumstances that will probably lead to people dying and you just let them die like bugs on your windshield, that's a different level of immorality. Anyway, we're going to have a wee look at some of the coverage around it. Theresa May's handling of the whole situation has been widely criticised. She eventually returned and met local residents. Here's some raw footage capturing the strong reaction of the crowd as she left.
I tell you, Theresa May, you can criticise her for being the kind of face of kind of uncompassionate capitalism, but every time I look at her, I just want to give her a massage. She has this way of leaning forward. Yeah. You know, she needs a bit of yoga, she needs to straighten up, and she needs a shoulder rub. And, you know, I want to take her to my saloon.
Whoa! Do you have a massage saloon?
Yes, I do, yeah. It's a sideline.
I know what you mean. She's a bit like an angle poised lamp or something.
It's strange, you know? The Leaning Tower of Theresa.
Do you know what I think? Theresa May, the more we use her as, we blame her name, she will go, they'll blame her as a bad Prime Minister, they'll continue. It's the Tories, it's a party of people. You have to keep remembering, it's all of them, not her.
Yeah, but I can't massage all of them.
Now, the media has also been questioned over its coverage of Grenfell Tower. Although obviously frustrated with the mainstream media, some residents have refused to be pigeonholed by the coverage, as this forceful interview demonstrates.
What do I want to happen? I want it to be a revolution in this country. I say, fuck the media, fuck the mainstream. You don't deserve to be there, do you know what I'm saying? I mean, we should be campaigning not to government, but to the BBC, who acts as mouthpieces for this corrupt government. Do you know what I mean? People need a revolution in this country, nothing short of that. And if this was any other country, there'd have been a revolution. We've seen how the mainstream media have responded and reacted. But what this election has done is shown that people are immune. They're wearing bulletproof vests to you and the other billionaire sort of media owners and Rupert Murdoch and all those other motherfuckers. I say you personally about them, identifying you as the mainstream media. Do you understand what I'm saying, Pierre? You are a bunch of motherfuckers.
There's this slight thing where you almost feel like the mainstream media is like an app that hasn't been upgraded for a long time. And he's like a few reporters you've seen kind of wandering around like kind of dads coming into a teenager's bedroom when they're forming a band. Oh, hello, what's going on here?
Why can't you be hopeful? You're showing this on the BBC. It's a mouthpiece of the mainstream media.
We need to kind of interview those people just more often, you know. For these people, it's raw emotion.
He acknowledged, and I'm shouting in your face, you're a representative, I'm not aggressive to you. Like, it was still so humane.
And you had me at motherfuckers.
Well, despite how articulate that guy was, I think it's just interesting to see how that clip was captioned online. So we look, Grenfell Tower, scary guy gets heavy with media. Grenfell Tower.
It's somebody that's traumatised, that's passionate, that's emotional, and he's called scary.
But that is also just the internet, and I'm not defending this, but if you write articulate man makes great points, no one watches it.
OK, the news cycle has a short attention span, but I think it's important we keep talking about Grenfell, keep asking questions and keep those responsible on the hook. But for now, moving on from the Grenfell Tower tragedy, as Kensington and Chelsea Council wish everyone would, let's go back to those DUP pricks. For many people, the £1 billion deal with the DUP epitomises the death of hope in our political system. But is hope really dead? Yes. Don't get me wrong, the Democratic Unionist Party and I share many of the same interests and concerns: religion, sodomy, money, and telling women what to do with their bodies. During the election, Tim Farron, much to his credit, brought sodomy kicking and screaming back into modern political discourse. But it's the DUP which has really put sodomy back on the table, where it belongs. This is the 21st century, after all. It's entirely appropriate that we are still obsessing about 4,000-year-old moral codes. It's all very well humans faffing about building quantum computers and colonising Mars. We need to be thinking about what we put in our bottoms. Of course, the DUP and I have a very slight, almost imperceptible difference in our view of sodomy. The DUP hates sodomy, whereas I fucking love it. For me, it's like eating a really hot curry. You know you're going to end up with a burning arsehole, but what else are you going to spend 20 quid on a Friday night? Well, thanks to Benjamin!
Lovely, man. Thank you.
Now, Brexit will be Christmas for racists. People said after the Brexit vote that British people don't trust experts anymore. I don't think that that's the problem. I think the problem is that British people have strong opinions based on fuck all. And while there are a lot of perfectly valid reasons to want to leave the EU, the people who were most empowered by the result were, let's be honest, racists. I certainly hope it isn't a hard Brexit, because if it's a hard Brexit, that means I've got 2 years left to persuade a Lithuanian care worker to take my mum with her. I honestly think Britain is so racist now, and probably Europe's so racist as well, that the best hope for refugees, sadly, is that they become aquatic. That they actually develop gills and start to live in the sea. Hipsters will take a gap year to go and swim with the refugees. How have you swum with the refugees yet? It's absolutely magical. You can feed them fish, but it's better if you teach them how to fish. Joining us to discuss what Brexit really means, please welcome Dane Baptiste. Dane, man.
What's up?
You a fan of Brexit? You worried?
I kind of feel like, as a black guy in the UK, post-Brexit, it's kind of like being like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. Because you told everybody it was going to happen, and that when these dinosaurs were reintroduced to the ecosystem, we'd have a shitstorm. Everyone was like, nah, you're being an alarmist. And now everyone's like, oh my God, England is so racist. And then I have to be like, no, are you serious? So I'm not massively worried, apart from not having an E111 card, which gets you, like, free healthcare on the continent, considering, like, most people enjoy going to the Mediterranean and writing off mopeds.
There's also the thing this week, isn't there, we're debating the rights of EU nationals who live in Britain as opposed to, like, British expats. But are we really going to give up French surgeons and stuff so we can get people who are on the run in Malaga? People whose skill set is basically karaoke and running a sports bar into bankruptcy.
And it's normally an Irish sports bar as well, which is very ironic considering, like, historically in the UK, black people are like Man United. We've consistently been public enemy #1. Then the Irish and the Jews are kind of like Liverpool. They had, like, an illustrious history, but it's not as good as it used to be. And people from the Muslim community, like Arabs and Asians, are now kind of like Man City in that in the last decade they've done real well. But it's mainly due to oil money, so we're still public enemy #1.
Christmas Day for racists, it depends if you have a nice family. I hate Christmas.
I got a terrible family as well. Christmas for racists is just Christmas. You're right.
I've always found family to be overrated. You know that thing you get in menus and it goes family-run restaurant? You think, who cares? Who's sitting there going, I hope everybody involved in the chain that brings this lasagna to my table is locked in a bitter dispute about their niece's abortion. Anyway, last week saw the Brexit negotiations finally begin, with May no longer supported by a Conservative majority. But are the negotiations going well or badly? Let's see if we can guess from Theresa May's body language as she was filmed exiting the first round of talks.
That looks like the end of first dates when the guy's like, I'd like to see you, but as friends. That's what it looks like.
Maybe that's an act. Maybe she gets into the car and sticks on Magic FM and it's like, it's gonna be a lovely day. So, with David Davis and his crack team of negotiators, we should be getting our message across to the EU. Here's President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, giving a concise update on how things are going.
Mr Juncker, are you getting a clearer idea of the kind of Brexit that the UK government wants?
No.
None of us know what's going on with anything. Like, I have a mobile phone contract that's 89 pages long. I don't know how much of my soul is owned by EE. We don't know anything about anything. Why should Brexit be any different?
Yeah, it's true.
So, multiple election loser Nigel Farage is, in any situation, always keen to paint himself as the real victim. When anti-Brexit activist Gina Miller forced the government to hold a vote on Article 50, she received a torrent of racist abuse. Here we can see a sceptical Farage question her claims.
She said earlier today that she'd received abuse for what she'd done. It's because she's black. That's why. Yeah, says it all, doesn't it? So? Says it all. And yet that gets broadcast. And again, we're all meant to think that's true. Can you imagine the media portraying a story that I've been unfairly treated because of who I am? You know, I'll do a press conference. I went to a public school and I'm white, and that's why they're being beastly to me. Do you think they'd run that?
I do feel sympathy for elites, though, because you think about them, like, getting sent away to boarding school and they get brought up in these kind of labyrinths of mahogany panelling that they have to navigate using a dinner gong. That's what that's for, you know, so they can find their family. That's why they all end up working in Westminster, because they're, like, subliminally attached to the noise of Big Ben. Bong! Mother!
At one point, they had a black UKIP member, which we know is an oxymoron. I guess it's because, you know, when they are dealing with accusations of racism, people are like, we're not racist, I've got a black friend.
I always wondered about that. You know, like, you get those, like, there's always, like, a black guy in the BNP, or you think, what are you doing with your life? What, putting dog shit through your own letterbox?
I'd That's always been a very ironic tactic used by racists of putting shit through people's letterbox, because obviously they'll be like, well, we've got to get them. They're like monkeys. How do we show them they're monkeys? We'll shit in our hands and then throw it. At some point, there's no one to say, look, white power and everything, but I'm carrying your shit.
Channel 4 were also keen to investigate the complex issues surrounding Brexit in the only way they knew how, by recommissioning Wife Swap, as this eye-opening clip shows.
We need to shut our borders to the EU as well, to stop people coming over here that are not actually contributing to the country. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but if you just keep one argument, because the people here didn't come in because of the EU.
No, I'm not saying they have. So you've got facts, I haven't. You've got all your statistics, I don't. I'm not particularly minded as you are, right? So this is like coming from... This is coming from the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah? I feel like I'm a stranger in my own country. There's like used to be a really good white area here, didn't it?
Oh! Where has everybody been? They've been saying this for years. Like, basically, racism is like grime. It went underground like the early 2000s for a bit, and only the real fans stuck with it online. And now it's back in fashion again. Everyone's like, yeah, I was always racist, I'm back, all right.
So there are people, and sometimes it feels, I'm a white person, right? I'll admit it. And so I want to be really...
It's about time, Sarah.
So I'm always really wary of trying to find positives in things that are not necessarily my place to make a proper judgment about. And there are people that say racism has always been there, it's insidious now, at least. If people are more vocal, we can talk to them more, we can communicate better, we can deal with those areas. But is that another way of white people excusing going on now they're on telly again?
No, because I think most people of colour can agree with this, is that we've gotten to the point where we've evolved past just relying on racial rhetoric and verbal racism. Like, we have a radar now. Like, I've done gigs where after someone's been like, oh, mate, can I buy you a drink? I've got a mate, he's coloured. Now, some people may find that uncomfortable, but this is someone offering to buy me a drink. Whereas, if I go to a nightclub and they say, it's not your night tonight, that's a lot more racist.
Yeah.
We've gotten to the point now where I can tell by a look.
What's the look?
Now, when it comes to Brexit, many will have voted for it with the best intentions, but at the same time, we have to be honest about what it's delivered. All sorts of nasty political parties have felt more legitimised. Britain First is a far-right movement created by former members of the BNP. Take a look at this baffling rant from their leader, Paul Golding.
I see halal slaughterhouses. I can't even go out and get a dish of my favourite food. I can't go out and get chicken tikka masala now because every single takeaway and restaurant serves halal meat, and I will not eat halal meat because it offends terrorism.
He's basically saying he wants the animals' heats to be killed with a bolt gun, as God intended.
I like the idea that when they get the money from the chicken tikka, it's like, oh, that's £8, please. Or should we put it towards terrorism? No, because they weren't halal chickens. So put it in the till, and then there's a system.
So, the BNP also try, but often fail, to present themselves as morally sound individuals, as a dumbfounded Joe Coburn discovered on the Daily Politics show whilst questioning their leader, Adam Walker.
One of your policies is implement zero tolerance for drug dealers and violent thugs. Yet you were given a 6-month suspended sentence in 2012 after verbally abusing 3 young school children, chasing them in your 4x4 and then slashing the tyres of their bikes with a sheath knife. And you were a school teacher at the time.
Yeah.
If that's not thuggish behaviour, then what is?
It was described as the judge as a rush of blood to the head, and I apologise for that at the time.
He was sort of like a more likeable John Terry.
I mean, maybe more teachers should be chasing pupils in 4x4s, right?
It depends what he was teaching. If it was maybe PE, then I guess that's a kind of okay. Like, you lot got to run, we don't feel like it. We'll see about it. That makes more sense. But if he was doing, like, you know, food tech, then... And what you do, you get your curry... Is that halal chicken in your curry?
So... yes, Brexit will be Christmas for racists. A proper Christmas where all the shops are shut because there aren't any Muslims who don't care about Christmas to work in them. But it will be a bittersweet Christmas. Santa will need a visa, so instead all your presents will be hand-delivered, thrown through your window by a red-faced Tommy Robinson who had planned to spend the 24th of December trying to find a non-halal turkey. Norway will no longer give us a big Christmas tree to put up in Trafalgar Square. In its place, we will simply drape tinsel round a giant pile of homeless people, like a festive special of I, Daniel Blake. Of course, Theresa May has made a mess of Brexit negotiations. She's dealing with them with all the finesse of a demented pensioner haggling with an antiques expert on an episode of Cash in the Attic. Even Ed Balls was quoted this week as saying, Theresa May has lost all credibility. This from a man who wore a chiffon glitter pantsuit while straddling a Russian woman's face to Gangnam Style on national TV and then danced like a wardrobe having a brain hemorrhage. Well, that's the end of the show. Thanks to my guests, Sara, Pascoe, Katherine, Ryan, Benjamin, Zephaniah and Dane, Baptiste.
And the final episode of the series is on Friday the 14th of July here on BBC Two. Showcasing the newest comedy talent, John Robbins is live from the BBC, online now, with BBC Three.
I'd achieved everything before I was 22. I started looking for things to replace the